Hey folks, I am Kevin Iole. Sorry to come to you with bad news. I got a little breaking news today. I'm sure you may have heard by this point. Mike Tyson's fight on July 20th with Jake Paul, which was scheduled for Dallas Cowboys Stadium in Arlington, Texas, and was going to be on Netflix, which is also a huge deal, getting live boxing on Netflix. That fight today was postponed. Tyson had an issue with his ulcer on a flight flying from Miami to Los Angeles on Sunday. They put a statement out early in the week saying it was no big deal. Tyson was fine. He thanked his doctors. But today, the news just broke a little while ago that his doctors recommended that Tyson do nothing, no training for the next couple of weeks. So to be fair to Mike Tyson, Jake Paul and Tyson agreed that they would postpone the fight and give Tyson ample opportunity to train. Joining me right now is my friend and the host of the Zapata brand boxing podcast. You can find that on YouTube, George Zapata. He is the better-looking brother of Coach Dennis Zapata. George, what's your thought of hearing this news? Kind of sad. I know a lot of people are really excited to see Iron Mike back.
Well, thanks, Kevin, for having me on your channel here. Yeah, you know what? I did text you, though. I did thought this was the way Tyson, this fight would not come off. If you remember when it first happened, I texted you and said, hey, what's going on with Mike? Then his PR guy reached out to you and said that this fight is going to happen, but it was just a flare-up of an ulcer. My suspicion was that was a way out, but you had said the fight was on. And this, to be honest with you, Kevin, this is news to me. I'm just getting here right now. You're telling me for the first time, right prior to us going on here. I don't know if there was a lot of boxing people looking forward to this. Would you say?
I think a lot of people, Mike Tyson is a special guy, right? He fought an exhibition fight against Roy Jones in 2020. And look, Roy Jones and Mike Tyson are two of the greatest fighters of all time, two of the biggest stars in boxing of all time. But it was an exhibition fight. It was celebrity judges. We knew that it wasn't going to be a real fight. And yet they still sold 1.6 million pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
This fight on Netflix, which I think that, and we'll get into that in a second, but the fight being on Netflix and Netflix's entry into live sports and of course live boxing, that was really, I think, the killer here if this fight does not resume. Now, I should say that promoters, MVP, Most Valuable Promotion, that's Jake Paul's company, they announced today that the fight has been postponed, not canceled, and that they will announce a new date on June 7th. So that is a week from today as we record. They said that if people want to keep their tickets and go to the fight on the new date, that they can do that, and they'll have the same seats on the new date. If people can't make it on any new date, and they could have only made it on July 20th, they can write to SeatGeek, Dallas Cowboys at SeatGeek.com, email them at that address, and they'll be able to get refunds for those tickets. But there's a lot of implications to that because there was also a really good fight on that undercard, which was going to be Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano rematch. So really difficult. And to see Mike, who is such a big star, not be able to make it to the post, I know a lot of people were looking forward to that.
Now, let me ask you, so do you think Katie Taylor and Serrano will fight on the same card, just move it with them, or will they kind of go a different route?
Well, it's interesting that you asked me that question because just before you and I went on, I put a tweet up and I recommended that they move the Taylor Serrano card to August 3rd. And the reason I recommended that was that'll be the least disruption for them. They're in the middle of their training camp. And that August 3rd card lost a big fight today when Tim Tszyu had to fall out of the fight. So the Tim Tszyu Virgil Ortiz fight is off right now. Tszyu's cut is not healed well enough, and so he can't fight. So there was talk that Ryan Garcia might step in and fight and might fight Virgil Ortiz. Virgil Ortiz has actually tweeted that and talking to Ryan. But I thought that, maybe it was a good idea to move Taylor Serrano to that card. That's just my idea, George, and there was no, nothing official. I just put that out thinking about it, that it might be something. As of right now, all the press release says is that the Tyson-Paul fight will be rescheduled, and it will be announced on the new date by June 7th.
Oh, wow, you're breaking news to me here. I didn't even know the Tszyu fight got canceled. I was busy doing stuff all day. So that's canceled now. So they're going on with that card? That card's still good?
Well, that card has Crawford versus Madrimov at the top, and that is still
Right.
going forward. And there was a lot of other fights on that card, right? That's a deep card that
Yeah.
is going, I think, is only going to get better. Jared Anderson is going to fight on that card potentially against Deontay Wilder. We'll see what happens there, depending on what happens with Wilder in Saudi Arabia. But the big news here, and what we should really focus on is Mike Tyson. And here's what I want to say, George, and I don't know if you will agree with this, but I am not crazy about seeing a 57, 58-year-old guy fight, right, under any circumstances, right? No matter how great he was. I mean, and if you go back to Mike's career, and I'm just going to pull up his record here while we're talking. Let's go back to his last, 5 fights. Lennox Lewis, he gets lost KO 8, was completely drubbed in that fight. Clifford Etienne, he won that in what was it, 49 seconds. Etienne was completely intimidated. But then he fights Danny Williams on July 30th, 2004. He gets knocked out in 4 rounds. Then fights Kevin McBride at the MCI Center in Washington, then the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. And he retires on his stool after 6 rounds. Tyson did not look like Mike Tyson for years and years and years. And so what did we expect when he got to be 58 years old? What kind of fighter was he going to be in the ring? You know how tough that is to get in there and fight at an advanced stage.
Well, I'm saying he was out 15 years ago, like in his interviews, didn't want to fight, had no, and now he would be going in with a 28-year-old. Granted, I know people who have seen a Jake Paul fight, just training. That he can put together something to take out a 58-year-old guy. I mean, the casuals always come to me and tell me Tyson's going to kill him. Like, man, 58's 58. You just don't. First of all, you don't recover like you used to. Secondly, Tyson's, and this is alleged, but I'm just saying, Tyson's body looking that way, he's taking something. There's something going on there. You're not at 58. You don't look like that. You don't have that kind of muscularity. You go reverse. Yeah, I would highly suspect he would not just stone cold stop smoking marijuana. There's so many issues here in this fight. It comes to a safety issue to me at that point. And I'm looking at me. I'm nowhere near Mike Tyson's athletic ability. I tore my shoulder. It tears. This tears. That tears. It's a mess. And your recovery is so long. They're telling you 8-9 months. Come on. If you've been out for that long, no way.
I want to read this quote that Tyson, they put out a statement from Tyson today. And this is a part of the quote. This isn't the entire quote, but part of it. My body is in better overall shape than it has been since the 1990s, and I will be back to my full training schedule soon. Jake Paul, this may have bought you some time, but in the end, you will still be knocked out of boxing for good. Now, I wish I could believe that, right? I wish that I could believe that he was but I mean, let's go for a second here and let's look at his fights in the 1990s. And I'm just going to I'm going to read them starting with the most recent 1990s fight, and give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, and I'll give you some of my comments. So October 23rd, 1999, he fights Orlin Norris in Las Vegas. I was at that fight. That was a no contest. Did you think Mike looked good in that fight?
Orlin Norris didn't want to fight.
So
he got hit, and that, no, that's a down.
Okay. That and January 16th, 1999, my old golfing buddy Francois Botha, used to play a lot of golf with him at Las Vegas Country Club. He fought Mike Tyson on that date. KO 5. Mike wins that fight. Botha was actually doing pretty good in that fight. And Mike lands the thing. So would you give that an up or a down?
I give it a thumbs up for that one. He looked good he looked good.
I'm more. Where do I put my thumb here? There we go. I'm going to be more sideways there. I don't want. He won the fight. He won the fight by knockout early in the fight against the guy that held a championship.
Right.
So you got to give him credit for that. But I thought he lost the first 4 rounds, or 3 of the first 4 rounds. Certainly did not look in that fight. Now we come to 2 Evander Holyfield fights, and let's group those as one. 6/28/97. That's the bite fight. Tyson gets disqualified in the 3rd round. 11/9/96. That is the first fight with Holyfield, when Mike was a 25-1 favorite, and Holyfield wins that by TKO 11. Any thought?
Obviously down, but listen, if you look at that fight where they were, at the time, Holyfield was a sacrificial lamb. They were throwing that first fight, right? He was good for what, 2 rounds, Tyson? And that was back then. Back then, he was good for 2 rounds. You think
That's
now?
the point I'm trying to make, right?
You
So
know,
now we'll go the fight before that, and that was the night that Tupac got killed. And I was at that. I was at all these fights, but that was 9/7/96 at the MGM Grand. Bruce Seldon, and I think that's the last time that you can really say Mike looked great in the fight. And it was a KO one. But even in that fight, I don't know if you remember that
oh,
fight.
yeah.
You know, Bruce Seldon was not, not looking to engage with Mike. And
No
there was
way.
questions that the punch top, kind of grazed the top of his head. You know, it was not a Tyson shot on the chin like he had. And so if we discount that one, then we got to go to 3/16/96 when he fought Frank Bruno. But at that point, we're getting close to 30 years ago.
Right. And the Bruce Seldon fight, he was petrified. He almost looked like Alex Stewart. When he got hit, he got up okay, and then all of a sudden he started to wobble. So I kind of guess he looked good. That was a good, but I mean, Bruce Seldon didn't want to be in there. Mike Tyson still had that aura then.
Yep.
It still did.
So I think when you look at it and you go, Mike said, I'm going to look better than I have. Mike did not look good through much of the 90s. We'll say he looked good in some of the 90s, but he didn't look good in much of the 90s, and I'm not going to go through all these fights, but let's go back. Buster Mathis Jr., Peter McNeely, the 2 fights against Razor Ruddock. I mean, there was a lot of thought that Razor Ruddock, would have won that, the one fight, the second fight there. I don't know. I mean, we started the 90s with the Buster Douglas fight. I think Mike's best performances clearly were in the decade of the 1980s, and that what came after that, Mike was not quite the same fighter that he was earlier.
They always say the great ones always have one last one left in them, where you kind of think that but when you have that much of a gap, you couldn't tell me Ken Griffey Jr. could come in right now, Major League Baseball, and could he have one good? Maybe a good at bat, maybe, but not against a 23-year-old 101 mile an hour fastball from that kid from
Paul Skeens.
Yeah, you can't. It couldn't happen. Even though he's a rookie and he's just getting, he doesn't have a great curveball, or he doesn't have this feel of baseball. He wouldn't do well. Could he fight a guy who was a lot older? Maybe. Well, Roy Jones is a perfect example. He would have handled Roy. Weight difference, but he would have handled Roy at that point if they had a real fight.
I mean, when the fight was announced, I said, what can reasonably be expected of a 58-year-old guy? Because Mike is 57 now, will be 58 on fight night. What could reasonably be expected? And while, I'm not critical of Jake Paul, what he's doing. I think there's some things that are good. I wish he would start fighting boxers and stay away from MMA fighters and stay away from 60-year-old guys and that type of thing, and get him in there with people that are going to push him forward. He claims that he's going to win a world title someday. And I know we're all impatient and we want to see it happen now. Right. But I think what we want to see really out of Jake Paul is we want to see him face appropriately talented fighters and see how he gets pushed. Right. And, fighting Andre August or fighting these MMA fighters, that's not going to prove it. And I think what we want to see with Jake is get him in there with a guy similarly situated to him, a guy with 10, 12, 13 pro fights that, that's still on the rise and still learning. It doesn't have to be, we're not looking to put him in there with Daniel Dubois, right? We're looking to put him in there with somebody who is halfway decent. But, he's good for boxing in the standpoint that he's bringing a lot of attention. He's showing other fighters how to promote, and give him credit. He's putting on good fights on, Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. This is the rematch. Give him a lot of credit for that. That's an awesome fight.
Well, then let me ask you to that point. At what point would you give him a buffer until you start saying, because if you think about, I thought Tyron Woodley was going to be the fight where he knocked him out. He knocked him out pretty clean. Whether people are saying that was a clean knockout. I mean,
It
But
was a good
everybody,
knockout, but it was not. So the problem is, MMA fighters are not boxers. No, they have good hands and they're good athletes and they're used to fighting under the bright lights. And that's why I thought Ben Askren would beat him because, even
oof.
though Ben Askren was a wrestler, right? But Ben Askren competed in the NCAA championships. Ben Askren, won world titles in Bellator. He fought in the UFC. He won a championship in ONE FC. So Ben Askren had been at the highest level of sport. And I thought that would just lift Ben Askren into a fight, not the fact. And so the fact that Jake beat him, I knew Ben didn't have great hands, but I thought that would be enough that it would lift him. I was clearly wrong on that. But MMA fighters, they throw their punches from different angles. They have to defend differently, right? So when you're in boxing, it's hard to make that adjustment, quickly. And so I don't think you're getting a true read on how good somebody is as a boxer. And what I like to see from Jake's standpoint, is put him in with some better prospects. It doesn't have to be a guy that you think is going to be the undisputed champion of the world someday. But, the guys he's facing, the last two opponents he's faced when he's been quote unquote facing boxers have really been weak.
Well, let me ask you this then. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but let me throw this out there for you. Okay.
Whenever a question starts, I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
That means
it's coming.
Okay. Okay. So just out of curiosity, if he thought his ceiling was here, I'm talking to Jake Paul. I say my ceiling is going to be here. Okay. He's already got the money. So his ceiling is here. Would you take this fight with Mike Tyson, being that he's loved Mike Tyson, Tyson's kids love him? Would it be out of the realm that he puts his neck out on the line and gets knocked out? And just not purposely. I mean, not purposely, but just have Mike Tyson look like the Tyson of old?
No,
You don't think so? You don't think that's out of the realm?
That's basically saying the fight would be fixed. And
Not really. No, I mean, if he said, "Hey, I tried, I threw a punch, I got," you know what I mean? Not saying that anyone knows other than Jake Paul himself, and then kind of skirts away because he's already kind of reached his ceiling at that point.
I don't see what the benefit for him is doing that, right? Getting knocked out by a 58-year-old guy, right? So, you had said earlier, well, yeah, all the casuals think that Mike Tyson's going to win. A lot of the, hey, look, Teddy Atlas, when I interviewed Teddy Atlas, he thought Tyson would win. And there's, not too many people smarter in this world than Teddy Atlas. And also, we know Teddy Atlas has no love lost for Mike Tyson, right? So he has no reason to say something good about Mike Tyson. So if Teddy is saying that, to me, I was on the side. Look, Jake Paul is an athlete, and he's 27 years old, I think, 28 years old. Let me just look him up while I'm talking. But he's in his 20s, and he's an athlete. He's competed in wrestling. His boxing career so far. So Jake is 27 right now.
Mm-hmm.
That is the peak age, right? That is the peak time when you're at your best, physically. And I just look at it and I said to myself when the fight was first announced, can Mike possibly win this? And of course, if Mike could hit him, but what you're seeing when you see Mike hit the bags on those clips that are posted on Twitter, you're seeing 5 or 10 seconds of boom, 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 boom. And what you're not seeing is what happens when the camera goes off and how long before they shoot another one of those videos and how Mike actually looks when he's training for these fights, right? They're giving you Mike at his best in these clips to try to sell the fight. Of course, that's their job. We're not. But our job is to at least call BS if we see BS. And I just don't know that, Mike Tyson at 47 against Jake Paul at 27, I'm probably saying Mike Tyson knocks him out. But you're closer to 60. I mean, he's close to Medicare age, for God's sake,
Yeah. But safety issue, put that apart. Safety issue apart. The commission has agreed to allow this to go.
It's a sanctioned fight.
It's a sanctioned fight. If something did happen, that would be disastrous. If for Mike Tyson.
Well, I mean, if something happened to Mike Tyson, he got hurt badly. I mean, oh my God, it's disastrous. But what I would refer to disastrous is, Jake Paul's license, his promoter's license would be at risk if he did what you suggested, just stuck his chin out there and let himself get hit.
Mm-hmm.
That that then, so I don't think anything like that would be going on. I think both Mike and Jake, if the fight happens, and I have my doubts if it'll ever happen, but if Mike and Jake show up and there is a fight some night in the future between these two, I think they're both going to try to win. But my read on the situation is that Mike at 57 years old is going to have a very short window of time that he can pull this off. He might be dangerous in the first round, and remember, they're 2-minute rounds. So they're not 3-minute rounds. So the interesting thing was, this plan was the women who generally fight 2-minute rounds, because it's Amanda Serrano, they're going to fight 3-minute rounds. and the men who usually fight 3-minute rounds are going to fight 2-minute rounds as a concession to Tyson. So now, it's harder to knock somebody out in 2 minutes than 3 minutes, right? Because you have less time. You have less time to set things up. You finally get something set up, and boom, you lose that last minute, and the bell rings. But I think Mike's window of opportunity, if you want to call it that, would be in the first 2, maybe 2.5 rounds, and then after that, forget about it.
Only in boxing. But here's my point on the whole thing about Jake Paul with the possibility of that. I'm not saying he fixes it. I'm saying him being like, you know what? I got the money. I got this. I want this guy to look good. I love Mike Tyson. And then get out of boxing, I think, because there's only so much, you and I know, there's only so much this guy coming in on the white horse is going to take care of boxing. There's only so much. Unless you run it like a Dana White, there's only so much you can do. So he's made his money here. Bigger star than he's ever going to be. Maybe it's a bone to Mike Tyson or whatever and get out. I'm not saying it's fixed. I'm saying there's just that feel to me, and I've had it since day one. Something funny's here. It almost seems like wrestling. Something's just funny with this whole thing.
Here I'm going to say answer by saying this. People want money, right? And so when you become rich, you don't say I'm rich and you quit. The rich people keep trying to make more and more and more and more. And Jake has found, give him credit. This guy is making a ton of money. He's a very smart guy, and he's not making it solely from boxing, but he's making a freaking ton of it from boxing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he is also committed. I don't know how successful in the long run he is going to be affecting change, but he is committed to trying to make some of the issues he sees in boxing changed and fixed. So while I don't like some of the antics that go on, I respect what he's doing, trying to build up the sport, trying to put on shows, and I respect his hustle to make money, right? And if he makes $25 million to fight Mike Tyson, who knows who would fight him next? Everybody and his brother in boxing and MMA is lining up. Ryan Garcia said on Twitter the other day he wanted to fight him, right? Now Ryan Garcia might want to fight you or Coach Diz at some point, but the point being is that very prominent athletes are saying they want to fight Jake Paul, and that means real money. And if he can take 5, 8, 10 of those kind of fights, you're talking a guy could get close to billionaire status. He's going to make a ton of money, and God bless him. He'll do what he wants the rest of his life.
So overall, you think the fight is going to come off or not come off?
I think it's not going to come off. I think that Tyson won't be able to make make it to the post. That's what I think eventually. It's this now, and it could be a pulled hamstring. Look, you need your legs in boxing, right? That. You're 58 years old and you're out there running on the streets at 4 a.m, or pushing. Mike's probably doing it on a treadmill in a gym, right? I'm sure Mike's probably not out there in the street, but his hamstrings are probably tight, and all those things that happen. That when you're 27, they happen occasionally when you're 27 and 28, but not as often. But when you're 57 and 58. I can tell you, believe me, I'm past 57 and 58. I can tell you things hurt that I didn't know I had when I was 27, right?
Exactly.
And there's parts of my body that hurt now that I didn't even realize. Jake is, is going to be in shape for this fight. He's going to be ready to go whenever they fight. I just don't think Mike is going to be able to make it to the post.
Let me take you on a business perspective. Amazon teams up with PBC. They team up, has a pretty good show. This is Netflix's first foray into this. Does this hurt that relationship at all?
No,
if it doesn't come off. If it doesn't come off.
Well, if it doesn't come off, certainly that's going to be something. I think that if you are Netflix and you're the Netflix CEO, it's a roll of the dice, right? You're sitting there saying, if it doesn't happen, what do we lose? The worst scenario would be for this to have happened on July 18th or July 19th, right?
Yeah.
The night before the fight or 2 nights before the fight. The fact that we're this far out, they'll be ready with alternate programming, and they'll have whatever they have on their network people can watch, and it'll be. I mean, Netflix isn't a live TV anyway, so that people can watch whatever they want on there. And I'm sure there would be people on Netflix that night, but it would look bad the week of the fight if it went off. But I think now it is okay, and I think that the CEO of Netflix and the decision makers there, they're going to say, hey, look, we need to get into live sports. What better way to do it when you could get 100 million people? This is a worldwide thing. This is not a US thing. This is not pay-per-view. It's free on Netflix. So all you have to do is have a Netflix account. And, there's people all over the world that have a Netflix account, George. And I think, this is going to be huge. And I think it's going to be their introduction to live sports. And I think they would like to do that. So I think Netflix is going to say, hey, this is a good gamble for us to take, because what happens if it doesn't happen? Well, hey, we tried, and they just move on. And if it does work, oh my God, they're going to have a ton of people watching their network on one night. It'll probably be a record for the most people watching the same network on the same night.
Do you think they could do small shows to build up some fighters, or no? Do you think they would just do the big ones?
I don't think they want to do small shows, right? What is Netflix really a quote unquote small show network? I think their ambition is going to be, okay, look, they're going to get an NFL game, right? So a regular season NFL game. That's top shelf. That's the kind of stuff they're shooting for. And I'm sure they were shooting for, Peacock had a playoff game, right? I'm sure they won even, they're probably thinking in their mind, hey, some year we're going to get the Super Bowl. And it's going to take a lot of moolah to get that. But I mean, boxing, hey, let's prove you can do big events. And so that's what I'm thinking that they're going to do. And I don't know anything. So, I cover the UFC closely. I don't know anything now, but their deal was up with ESPN and negotiations are going to begin. It would not shock me whatsoever if the UFC splits up their TV agreement and part of it is on Netflix. Would not shock me whatsoever. I think, Dana White knows the value of live programming, to TV networks, and he loves that global reach that you can get, being on Netflix. The UFC is going to have their August 3rd show. So there's 2 shows on August 3rd. UFC has an awesome show scheduled for August 3rd in Abu Dhabi. In the US, that's going to be on ABC. So how many people are going to watch that on ABC, right? It's going to be an afternoon fight. I mean, at absolute best, 2 million, right? Absolute best, 2 million. Now, back when Ali fought Leon Spinks on ABC in 1978 in their rematch, it did 93 million.
Holy cow.
And that, now that was Muhammad Ali, and that was when you only had 3 networks, right? And then you had a couple UHF channels. I remember that fight, very well. But Dana White remembers that, and he knows that happened. And now he's thinking, I could get on to freaking Netflix, and if I put on the right show, I could have 100 million people, 150 million people watch me on the same night.
That would be an incredible thing if they can get that, because if they would control the production still, I would imagine they wouldn't give that up, because their production is
no, they'll never give that up. That's their thing.
Okay, so doing that and partnering up with someone like that. That would, you talk about putting a rocket ship on you and going. I mean, not only just the casuals, you get like the moms that are homemakers. If they get interested in a fighter, a good looking guy, they'll be like, hey, this guy looks pretty good, or a guy with a woman there. That's a huge door.
Ali is a great example of what it can be, right?
Right.
Ali, they drew 93 million for that fight, and they had a lot of other fights that, weren't that big, but were big. Right. Dwarf the numbers that are being done today. And I think, there's never going to be another Muhammad Ali, but we have things now that Muhammad Ali didn't have back then. The internet, social media, all these ways that you can promote a fight and a fighter, that all he had to do, talking to magazines, television stations, and newspapers. That's how Ali got the word out, right? And he became massively huge as a result of it. He appeared on the Johnny Carson show how many times, and Dick Cavett and Mike Douglas show. Remember the Mike Douglas show? You're a Philadelphia guy.
No, I was born in '76, Kevin.
You got to remember the Mike Douglas show is Philadelphia.
No. Don't remember Mike Douglas. No, I was in Jersey at that time.
When I was graduating high school, you were born.
Yeah, how about it?
On this interview.
Well, he's even younger though. He was born in '80. He was born in the '80s.
Oh.
Think about that.
Oh man, maybe we should go to Jersey Joe. So
oh yes, he would qualify. He's hovering the 51 or 50-year-old mark at this point. Yeah, he does that. He's right around there. So he would be more familiar with
you. So let's I just want to wrap up on this because I appreciate your time and you got your wife waiting.
If we can real quick, Kev, UFC, could we jump in real quick with that? Just a couple seconds with that, or do you want to stay on with the
I'm good.
With the fight there? Islam, is there a staph infection there or no?
I haven't seen his leg, so I can't say. I mean, I cannot imagine the doctors would approve him to fight. You know, they do a check of the fighters on the day before the fight, right? It's not the most comprehensive physical, but they take their heart rate and they, and look and do the minimal that you do in a checkup, right? And they ask them questions, but they're going to look at his leg, right? That's gotten attention. And if they saw that they thought it was a staph infection, that's highly infectious, they would not allow the fight to happen. So I am guessing that, there is no staph there, but
okay.
So
no, okay.
Anyway.
But that, so yeah, I think that was a good one. But you also got this, with all these fights heating up here. You got the big bang fight against Wilder tomorrow. I saw your article, very good article you had there. Very nice.
Let's wrap up on Iron Mike on this. So I already gave my opinion. What is your opinion? Do we ever see Mike Tyson in the ring in a real fight again?
No, I think it's for his safety. They will not permit him to do that. No. And I feel honestly, he wouldn't pass a drug test in Texas. They're very strict with marijuana. I don't see it happening. I was shocked it happened. They were going to have it in Texas to begin with, but my opinion, no. I think the fight does not happen, and it's a blow to Netflix, and honestly, it's a blow to Jake Paul's promotion a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll see the end result of that. But if you haven't heard the news, Mike Tyson is out of his July 20th bout with Jake Paul. It will be rescheduled. They're saying right now, they say they will have a new date by June 7th. So let's wait and see what happens. Appreciate you joining me. That is George Zapata. Go ahead over and find the Zapata brand boxing podcast. How can people find that and subscribe to your podcast? Where in addition to a goober like me, you have a lot of other good people, including Aubrey Scavone on there.
Yeah, we actually just had Fred Sternberg on, Hall of Famer Fred Sternberg, by the way. Just had him on. That'll drop on Monday. It's the Zapata brand podcast, a boxing edition there on YouTube. I'm all over Facebook and mostly on George Zapata, but Instagram, the Zapata brand podcast, as always. And am I on the other one? Yeah, TikTok. But I don't know how to do it. I just do it through StreamYard, press the button. It goes on Instagram too. The Zapata brand podcast.
There you go. You know how to find it. Find George. He does a great job. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for joining me.
Kevin, as always, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.